The trailer for Shrek 5 was released just a few days ago, and the reaction is... oh, this is bad! Unexpected. Of course, it seems like anytime there is a long legacy sequel, and it's hard to even say that Shrek 5 is a legacy sequel, but it is just the truth that the last movie came out in 2010, more than 16 years ago. The reaction to Shrek 5 seems like an echo of every single new IP adaptation that comes out. Every time people react like this.
Oh, wow. They got Shrek.
The truth is, people are critical with reboots and sequels, and have been for decades. People have been critical of it since I was a kid, since before I was even born, since before I was even a twinkle in my mother's eye. People have been complaining about sequels and reboots. People will always be complaining about it, because it's always going to be in the theater, because it's always profitable. There is no doubt in my mind that Shrek 5 will make a lot of money. Every Shrek movie, since the very first one in 2001, has been one of the most prominent movies in the fiscal year. Shrek 2 in 2004 was, I think, the highest grossing film, which is insane to say about an animated movie today. Even more insane to think about when you consider what else was in theaters that year. Now, I think the people complaining about Shrek 5 are a little misguided. Of course, every modern animated movie is going to be ridiculed to death because it has to be eye-catching and poppy. You're not going to draw in parents and their kids if the movie you're showing looks uninteresting to them. And the thing that is interesting to kids right now are going to be eye-catchy pop culture moments. But I think it is important to remember that since the very first Shrek movie, its whole deal has been pop culture references. If you look at the Shrek movie now, a lot of it seems like very timely stuff, but when it came out, all the references were incredibly relevant within the first 2 or 3 years of the movie's release. I mean, we can see the scene where Fiona beats all of Robin Hood's merry men. It has a Matrix reference, which is a movie that came out 2 years before Shrek came out. It would be like Shrek 5 referencing Dune 2, which, if it did happen, would be incredibly ridiculed or celebrated. I don't know. It seems like sometimes people try to find things to complain about first before actually analyzing what the product is as a whole. Of course it is a product for the fans of the original movies, but it's also nearly a guaranteed financial success. It's also one of the most successful animated IPs of all time. There's a reason Shrek for a while was Dreamworks' mascot, because it was the most recognizable face that the company had made at the time. Now, people of course will complain about really any sort of pop cultural referential thing because it's at its heart pretty soulless. It doesn't have really anything to do with the story. But if you were to compare the pop culture trends of Shrek 5 to the pop culture trends of Shrek in just a vacuum of that era of time, there's not a whole lot different. Of course, the gingerbread man in the Shrek 5 trailer has a gumdrop butt. Have you watched Shrek 2?
What kind?
It's a thong!
And that's one of the main jokes. The bottom line is Shrek 5 is what Shrek has always been, which is an incredibly meta parody on what is popular in pop culture.
Wanna date a snowman?
At the time of Shrek, it was a parody of Disney films. And by putting pop cultural elements in it, it was really the inverse of what Disney was being at the time and what Disney had been for its entire history, which was completely separate from most pop culture. If you had worked on a Disney film, it was very unlikely that your names would appear really in any other motion picture or in any other industry other than animation. Of course, there were celebrity voice cameos, but Shrek was the one that really popularized pop culture voices by casting Eddie Murphy, Mike Myers, and Cameron Diaz, who were all just celebrities. And although they all did a really good job, in fact, Eddie Murphy had done voice acting work before for Disney, and Mike Myers is an incredibly talented person, it wasn't because of their talent. It's because they were popular household names that would sell tickets. At the time of making Shrek, it was almost universally known throughout Dreamworks that Shrek was going to be a critical and financial flop, and it was a surprise to everybody how successful it was. If you talk to anyone at the studio in the making of that movie and told them that the film was going to win the first animated picture Oscar, they would have laughed at your face. But now, of course, Shrek is a historical landmark in the landscape of animated film. So to say that the Shrek 5 trailer is such a disservice to what Shrek has been as a brand, I think is incredibly culturally ignorant. I think it's important to note also that animated trailers have always been like this, and the reason they put a gumdrop butt on the gingerbread man is because they knew people were going to talk about it. It's free advertising. Word of mouth is always going to be one of the strongest motivators to get people to the theater. No matter how many times you see an ad, you're really not going to want to go see a movie unless you have a friend tell you that the movie is good and that you should spend money on it. Shrek 5 has been in a lot of hot water since its first sneak peek, and the Shrek series hasn't really made anything of quality since 2004. If you're counting spin-off, then Puss in Boots: The Last Wish was really a resurgence in quality from the Shrek franchise. But Shrek itself has made 2 good movies and 2 controversial movies, and this 5th movie is seen as nothing but a cash grab on that franchise. Do I think the movie is going to be good? Probably not, but not because of the trailer, but because it's really easy to tell why they're making this movie. There isn't really an artistic incentive to make a good film like there was with the first 2 Shrek movies. There's an incredible financial incentive. It's incredibly relevant to remember that Dreamworks is owned by the same company that owns Illumination. That is NBC Universal. Illumination's goal is to make incredibly cheap films that make a huge profit. That's why they've made 4 Despicable Me movies, and a 3rd Minions movie is going to be in theaters next month, because they're almost guaranteed to make $1 billion, and they cost less than $150 million to make. The company that owns Illumination is obviously going to take that same pattern and bring it to Dreamworks, and they're going to apply it to Dreamworks' most successful brand, because it's a lot easier to gamble on a franchise that is known for making $1 billion than it is to spend a lot of money on an animated film that's nearly guaranteed to flop. Now, this doesn't take away any respect from me that I have for Dreamworks. In fact, out of all the major animation studios, Dreamworks probably has the most respect for me. Not because it has the most quality output of films, but because they're consistently releasing interesting projects. They might be making Boss Baby 2 one year, but they're also putting a lot of investment into semi-original works. And if they are based on something, they're usually based on something a little more niche. Take a film like The Wild Robot, for example. Something that coasted off the success of Puss in Boots 2 animation-wise and really proved its worth in its release. That same year, they also made this Teenage Kraken movie, which wasn't as successful or critically acclaimed. But the fact that they're spending money in order to make these projects and put these projects out shows that they're avoiding the Pixar/Disney way of thinking, which is they're only going to put their investment in movies they're sure going to be a success. The reason I like Dreamworks is because even though I'm not a fan of Teenage Kraken movies, I'm sure there is a fan base for it. And there's going to be a young person who watches that movie who grows a special connection to it and maybe pushes them to see bigger and better movies. Just like I did when I was watching mediocre animated movies in my youth. This brings up another idea, which is people of my generation thinking that the animated movies we grew up on were a lot better than the slop that's coming out today. This is completely false, because if you look at those movies, you'll see they were just as bad as any slop we're getting now. Movies like Shark Tale and like Madagascar were seen as soulless pop cultural grabs in order to make a quick buck. Did you know that Madagascar was made as a ripoff of a Disney movie? The Disney movie The Wild came out in 2006, but it was in production for almost 3 years. Someone at Dreamworks found out about it while it was in production and decided to make a similar movie about animals lost in New York. That movie was called Madagascar, and it was released before The Wild was released and became immensely successful, sparking a $1 billion franchise, while The Wild was slowly forgotten to time. And you're telling me that Madagascar 2005 is more culturally respectable than Shrek 5? I can't say if Shrek 5 is going to be a good movie or not. I'm gonna have to see. But I don't think that Shrek 5 is an indication that animated movies are falling off, that they're never going to be as good. Animated movies have always been this way. The only reason they seem more sterile now than they have been when we were younger is probably because of things like Illumination that have found a way to streamline success. But It is worth respecting Dreamworks because they are one of the only animation studios putting a lot of money into unique, really non-successful ideas. Not because they have bad management, but because they're interested in putting things out there. They have a steady stream of output regardless of interpreted quality or predictable success. They are putting movies out there because there might be an audience for them. And it's a lot better for a company to experiment and find growth in that aspect than for a company like Pixar to make Toy Story 5. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening to my rant. Let me know what you thought of the Shrek 5 trailer. Let me know if you're going to go see it or what other movies you're going to see. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.